Get my 6. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the most awesomest homesteading channel on the entire internet. It has absolutely nothing to do with homesteading off the grid. So are you liking my new intro, me rolling in here on my piglet before I do the eye thing? And how about that eye? I have a sty, my. Terrible. It's a little sore. What? Why do I call it a piglet? Well, it sure ain't no hog. Okay, so listen. I'm going to draw you a picture. It's really like a chart, really like a graph. And you're going to understand why. I hope you learn something, and I hope that you share this with the younger people in your life. It's not going to be a colored pencil drawing, which you know is my new thing. Just finished a drawing. Let me show you. I drew some, see if you can tell what they are. Cherries. What do you think? First attempt. Not so bad. The paper's missing here because I cut out a drawing I made for my beautiful bride Dearly, aka Giggly Girl, for Mother's Day, and I put it in a little 4x4 frame. So I'm going to show you what I drew for her. See that? Honey for my honey, Mother's Day 2024. Signed it and dated it. But look at that. It's like a honey dipper stick. Look at that. Can you believe that's just Crayola colored pencils? I think this was used orange, yellow, light brown, black, and white. I think that's what that was. Okay, so anyway, listen. Made a video a few thousand of you watched it. I'm glad. It was about a very important message. It involved something that, unfortunately, I think a lot of children's parents are not having conversations with them about, and that's about the appropriateness of things to say and things not to say in public. So many parents are just giving their kids iPads and sending them on their way. You know, their kids are knowingly spending all day in their rooms playing video games, and the parents are like, oh, well, what can you do? Well, you can get involved, and you can put an end to it is what you can do. But it occurred to me there's so much. Young people aren't learning. So I made that video. I went live today on our Facebook page, Sick Twisted Humor, and it did really well there, much better, because we have a bigger audience there. But people are talking about how there's so many things that kids just aren't learning, and there's so many things that those of us from multiple generations never learned, especially if we attended the public school system. Marcus Aurelius, the former emperor of Rome, I'm reading Meditations by him now. He's considered one of the great philosophers ever. And he says in there, one of the greatest gifts he learned from somebody that was influential in his life was to not attend the public schools, pay any price to get a private education or a personal education, because that's one of the best investments you'll make in your life. I agree with that. Our son is now homeschooled. He does a virtual online private school. And we're teaching him things that they never taught me, certainly. You. And one of those things is about finance. And so I'm going to this is really cool. I'm going to draw you a chart to explain in the most simple forms more about finances in less than 10 minutes than you've probably ever known in your life. And I don't care if you're 60 or 70 years old. And you can still benefit from it even if you are older. But hopefully you share this with the young people in your lives or in your life, because they need to know. So we are opening up a custodial Roth IRA for our son. He's only 13. You can do this for your minor children and grandchildren, and you can put in the money. No, they have to earn the money, and he's earning it. He not only works for us, does things for us for which we pay him, but he's got a friend whose father hires him and his son, and they were doing yard work this week for $15 an hour. And we're putting some of it in a custodial Roth IRA where his money will grow tax-free. I don't want to get into the details of the various types of retirement plans and investment plans. What I want to talk about is money, because most people don't understand it. Listen, number one, this is something you'll think it's common sense, but so few people do it. If you want to not be broke, if you want to not be in debt, which is, of course, modern day slavery. Modern day slaves are not in chains, they're in debt. It's a pretty simple formula. Spend less than you make and save and or / invest the difference and be patient. My kid just finished reading a book called Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I've talked about that book on his channel before. I'll do my best to remember to put the link in the video description box below. But it's a wonderful book. And it talks about the things they just don't teach us in school. So, listen, when you earn, I'll write this down. When you earn, your money's taxed. And then after that money, you can spend it, you can save it, or you can invest it. Okay? So once you earn your money and it's taxed, with what you have left over, you can spend it on bills, on buying stuff. You can save it or you can invest it. Now, listen, folks, if you make $100 today, don't do, okay, as far as your after it's taxed, let's say it's 80. Let's say taking out 20% in taxes. So you got $80. Don't spend more than that, so you can save and invest something. Okay, so if you've got $80 after you're taxed, if you want to spend 70, whatever, maybe you'll have to for your bills, but that 10, save it, and then eventually start moving it over to investing. Now, most folks don't understand investing, and investing is simple as anything else in the world. I was a financial planner for 8 years. I spent my first 8 years after college. Well, my first year, I spent in a lumber mill stacking boards on a green chain for $5.50 an hour, I think. I was working 50 hours a week, and I was making $1,500 a month, $1,500 a month. I made more than that today, okay? I make more than that every day. I've been a social media content creator for 15 years. It's taken me a long time to get to this point, but we're doing quite well. So I don't forget those times, because for almost a year, I worked 50 back-breaking, grueling hours a week, 50 a week, to make less money in 1 month than I make now in one day, working 2 to 3 hours a day. So if you're going to work hard for your money, or if you're going to work smart for your money, or if you're going to be patient and build a business like I've done over the last 15 years, trust me, in the early days, people are like, oh, you're stupid, you're lazy, you just don't want to work, or you can't make it in social media because you're not a hot 20-year-old girl that knows how to twerk. You're some old dude that's talking about life experiences. Nobody wants to hear that. Well, Margaret, here we are, right? So it's important that you pay yourself first. So I tell my son, before you even go spend, before you go buy that gadget you want or that new game, save, invest. And as far as investments go, I want to explain to you what you can do with that. Okay, so let's say you save your money. If you save it in a bank, you're not getting squat. But let me give you this advice. And again, I was a financial planner. I'm going to tell you that I'm not recommending any of the investments I might talk about. I may or may not own some of them. I just want to give you some information. But let's say you want to save your money. Well, let's say you're at Bank of America or Wells Fargo. You know if they're going to pay you on your savings 0.1% or maybe 0.2%. But listen, there are options now because we're in a different world. Okay, for the last couple of years, I've been keeping my savings in a Capital One high interest yielding savings account because they were paying 4.325. They recently lowered it to 4.25. But guess what? You ever heard of a company called Credit Karma? Again, not sponsored, not being paid to promote this company, but they've recently opened up banking services through a real bank, and they're offering a high yielding savings account that's paying 5.1%. So I moved my savings to Credit Karma. 5.1% on lazy money, just sitting there doing nothing, is pretty freaking amazing, really. So, but don't expect more than that if you're just going to put it in savings. But now if you're going to invest, there are two things that you can do. There's two ways to invest. Well, there's multiple ways. You got real estate, you got commodities, you've got, what's that fake currency, Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies. Folks, me personally, I don't trust that. Doesn't make sense to me. I don't do it, but to each his own. But basically, you can do two things when investing your money. You can loan and my ink pen's going to die. I knew this. I used to, when I was a stockbroker and I was explaining this to people, I'd draw what I call my loan own chart. You can loan your money to a corporation or a municipality, and they'll pay you a fixed rate of interest on it. And what this is called fixed rate investments, such as bonds or bond funds, or you can own a company outright. Like you can buy publicly traded shares in a corporation, and there's multiple ways to make money doing that. If it's a fast-paced growth stock like a .com or whatever, biotechnology, you basically just hope that your shares appreciate in value. If they're a more established company, maybe like what we would call a growth and income company, yes, they're still going to grow over time, but they're so established and their earnings are so high they pay a dividend. Good example of this is Pfizer pharmaceutical stocks, which I do own. The symbol is PFE. Their current dividend yields around 6%. They're going to grow over time. The share price will appreciate, so you make money that way if you were to sell higher than you paid for it, but you'll also get that quarterly dividend. So if you loan your money out to, let's say, there's such a thing called tax-free bonds. They're issued by hospitals, airports, municipalities trying to build bridges. These will pay you tax-free interest. Now, interest rates are so low. I think the last time I checked, you're going to get like 3 to 4% on this. But it is tax-free. And if you're in a high-income tax bracket like we are, your real rate of return would be more like getting 6 or 7%. You could invest in corporate bonds. A lot of times, one of the ways corporations will raise money is by issuing bonds. Say Coca-Cola wants to build a new plant down the road. They need $50 million to do it. They don't want to use any of their cash on hand because they don't want to threaten the dividend they're paying to their shareholders. They might issue a bond. Corporate bonds will pay you a little bit more than municipal bonds, maybe 5, 6%, 7%. You know what you're going to get. It's a fixed rate. And this is typically for older folks who already have their money. They're not trying to make money as much as it is. They're just trying not to lose what they already have. Okay. So, and even if you go to a bank, you can put your money in a bank CD, certificate of deposit. It'll pay you a little bit more than savings, but not much. So let's say CDs, municipal bonds, and in bonds. Man, I wish I'd have brought another ink pen. Okay, but now ownership. This is like real estate, or what I like to just talk about most is stocks. So let's put in here and hope the pen doesn't die. Stocks. Okay. Folks, it's really simple. It's not hard to understand. You just have to use some common sense. So when you buy shares of stock in a publicly traded company, basically you become partial owner of that company. You get voting rights. They have, shareholders meetings every year. And if something's up for issue, they're going to vote on it. They'll send you what's called a proxy statement, and where you get to actually cast your vote. That's a pain in the butt. Listen, it's a good way to, now I'm older now, I'm 50. I'm in my, what's called our high income earning years. And I don't need when I was younger, I tried to make money with growth stocks like Microsoft. If you'd have bought that in the 90s, man, would you be thankful today? The tech stocks of the time, Intel Corporation. Now, a lot of them went bust, and that's a risk you take when you're looking for higher returns. But I'm at an age now to where I don't need stocks to make me rich, because I've already made myself rich with the work that I do. So I'm not trying to get rich off of stocks or any sort of investment. I'm trying to make sure that I'm never poor again, because I have been poor. I have been third world poor, and it sucked. It sucked bad. So I'm not willing to personally risk all this excess money I have when we get paid every month, going into high growth potential stocks, because I don't need to do that. I just want to keep what I have. So I look for dividends, and that's why I own Pfizer, 6%. When I started buying it some time ago, it was paying 6.5% or 7%. It's really shot up here just in the last few months. It's around $29 a share, I think, as of this recording. I started buying it at $26. But I like, so dividends, you look for old companies that are well established. They have buku profits, buku cash on hand. And one of the ways they reward their shareholders is by paying them that regular dividend. I own British American Tobacco Company, which pays a 10% dividend yield. Not going to get that at the bank on a savings account or in a CD or from a corporate bond. Philip Morris is another good tobacco stock to own. Now, a lot of people, and especially in America, oh no, you don't want to own tobacco stocks. They're being so regulated. They're going to go out of business and blah, blah, blah. Let me tell you the truth and reality on that. Listen, I spent a lot of time overseas. I spent this last winter in the Philippine Islands. What I'll tell you is this. Listen, the percentage of people that smoke, especially in established nations, first world nations, it's going down. It is, because we know it's stupid. It's going to kill you. And most people just don't do it anymore. However, in those first world markets, these tobacco companies have been successful in converting to non-combustible nicotine products, such as e-cigarettes, vapes. You see the vapes? You go to campus, we live right outside of Charlottesville. We'll walk across that campus. It's like all the students have these vapes hanging on a necklace. You see them in between class, vaping between class. The tobacco companies are the ones that own those products, okay? Now, I mentioned having spent my past winter in the Philippines. Let me tell you, those folks over there are still smoking. And even though a smaller percentage each year of them smoke, each year there are more people there smoking. Like, Crazy Lake, what kind of sense does that make? You're a nutcase. You're crazy. That's why we call you Crazy Lake. Yeah, I am crazy. That's why I live the lifestyle that I live. That's why I'm not enslaved by debt. It's funny. My kid was telling us today that sometimes his friends ask him if we're rich. And I said, what do you tell him? He says, well, I just tell him that you don't have any debt. Because my son, I tell him, do not have debt. If you don't need it, don't buy it. If you need it or if you want it, save for it. Make sure for every amount of money you blow on a material item that you're putting an equal amount of money into your investments. And that's just something we live by. So that's why we're able to go to the Philippines for an entire season, 5 months. Most people can't take 2 weeks off from work, or they won't be able to make the minimum payments on all their monthly obligations. And that's a choice. That's a choice. They chose, instead of, after earning, where's my little chart? After they earn and pay their taxes, when it comes to spend, save, invest, they don't even know about these two. They just spend, spend, spend. Next thing you know, oh no. So anyway, so we're big advocates of just not carrying consumer debt, not being materialistic. We enjoy experiences over stuff. We'd rather, this summer, we're probably going to spend the summer in Maine. We're talking about Maine and Montana. We'll figure it out. But we'd rather have that experience than say, hey, this summer, let's buy a pool that we'll probably use a bunch the first summer we have it, and then maybe once or twice every summer after that. That's just the reality, folks. We were catfishing the other day on the James River, down closer to Richmond in Charlottesville, and these guys are coming in with their boats. I looked over, I said, honey, you want one of those? And she says, no. And I says, why not? And she goes, because we'd use it a few times, probably the first year we had it. And after that, it would sit in the yard. Same way our kayaks are sitting in the garage most of the time, and we have to make ourselves really use those things a couple times a year. Hey, those kayaks cost $250 each, not $25,000. So that's an example. It's about understanding priorities and having self-discipline. So anyway, this is one of the things that they don't teach in schools. And they don't teach this in the private schools, most private schools. Some probably do have finance classes. But most people grow up. There are 50-year-old adults walking around right now that don't understand the basic concepts of stocks, bonds, and mutual funds. And a mutual fund, by the way, is they're designed for smaller investors. For instance, I was talking about stocks, some that I own, some others that I don't. A good way to get automatically diversified is to own a mutual fund. So if you buy one share of a mutual fund, it's a collection of stocks. There might be 100 different stocks inside that mutual fund. They might own Microsoft, Philip Morris. Oh, but here's my point about smokers. Oh, I got to get back to this. In the third world countries, people are still very adamantly smoking. And what do kids grow up to do? Kids grow up to do the same thing their parents do. And I've seen it already. I've witnessed, because I've been going and coming back and forth to the Philippines for 15 years. I know young adults now who smoke, who were children who didn't smoke, but who had parents who smoked. They watched those parents smoke, and now they smoke. And people over there are still having 6, 8, 10 children per family, per household. It contributes to their overpopulation problem throughout Asia. And these little kids are watching their parents smoke, and they're growing up to become smokers. So as the population grows, the percentage of people that smoke is smaller, but the number of people that smoke is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And these tobacco companies know this. They're not fools. You know the best performing stock in the last 50 years? Philip Morris. It's because of that dividend. They pay a 9% dividend yield. So if you had reinvested the dividend plus the growth of the stock, you would have outperformed everything in the last 50 years, despite their lawsuits, despite the regulation. And these companies know it. They know it. You know what the number one most smoked cigarette in the world is? Marlboro. You know what the number one most smoked cigarette in the Philippines is? Because I Googled it. Because I watch how people live. And I'm like, where are people spending their money? And then when I see where they're spending their money, I say, okay, how can I profit from that by owning stocks that are in that sector? The number one most smoked cigarette in the Philippines is Marlboro. Guess who makes it? Philip Morris International. This is how smart these tobacco companies are. So when Philip Morris started getting sued because people were dying from cancer and they were starting to get it to lose the lawsuits, they split their international tobacco products away from their home-based company, which is now called Altria, A-L-T-R-I. They're right down here in Richmond. Stock symbol for Altria is MO, and that's the one that pays a 9% dividend yield. Philip Morris International, which is PM, stock symbol, they pay like 5.5%, which is lower, but they've got a higher growth prospect. And the reason is because they're the company that makes all those Marlboro cigarettes that all those people in Asia smoke, all the people in Africa smoke, the people who still smoke in Europe, North America, South America, and the U.S. governing regulation bodies can't say squat to them about it because they're selling their products overseas. So, and they pay you a good dividend. So I hope you guys got something out of this. Many of you who watched this probably already knew all this stuff. Maybe you didn't. And folks, it's never too late to get started. People are living longer as long as they're not smoking. And especially with your children and your grandchildren, though. Yeah, they want to maybe do some side hustles and get some extra money to buy that latest video game and all that stuff. And 10 years from now, they're not going to be playing that. And one of the ways we introduced our son to stocks was about 2 or 3 years ago. For the first time, he started buying stocks. He started buying Sony because they're the company that makes the PlayStation. And they're down now. They're around $90 a share. But, so every time his friends' families, they're buying the PlayStations, the games, he benefits as a shareholder from the company's profits through direct stock ownership. And as the share price goes up, so do his gains. So talk to your kids about this stuff because, listen, we're big on making sure our son works around here. We don't work him to death, of course, but he washes the truck for $15. He mows the grass now, but we pay him $25, and it's on a zero turn, so it's not hard work. He does stuff around the house for his mom and me. I benefit from that because we believe that kids that don't work grow up to be adults that don't work. We've seen it. We have neighbors that had a teenager that never did anything. I remember one time his stepdad was going on and on about how he never washed a dish, never shoveled a walkway in the winter, never mowed the lawn, all this because his mother one of those helicopter parents said, oh, no, my little baby's not going to do any work. Well, guess what? The kid's in his mid-20s now and doesn't work. So we've seen it. And likewise, children who, once they've reached an appropriate age, who do not understand finances, who don't understand money, end up becoming adults who don't understand finances and who don't understand money. It really is that simple. My kid's 13. That's plenty old enough to learn. And we've talked to him. Yeah, we're going to pay you for this stuff. And he keeps an accounting sheet. And I told him, but listen, we're going to take a third of it out because you got to get used to this. Because when you're earning, they're going to take a third out. I mean, they take out 46% from me because I'm in the highest income tax bracket there is. And I can gripe and complain about it as much as I want, but there are some tax advantage things I do to lessen the pain. But that's just the reality. But I've told him we're going to take out a third. And we're not keeping it. We're not your IRS, but we're putting that in your custodial Roth IRA. So you'll get used to those deductions, those withholdings. However, this goes to directly benefit you, not those who choose not to work for a living. So I hope you got something out of this. And I'm trying to beat darkness and a heck of a storm that's coming. They're calling for flash flooding here in the Central Virginia region. So I'm going to get on my piglet and ride off into the sunset. It's somewhere, well, it's actually up that way. See y'all next time for more. Here at the most awesome homesteading channel on the planet that has absolutely nothing to do with homesteading. Homesteading off the grid.